It is Pete Prisco Power Ranking Tuesday. I'm Chris Hassel, joined by Pete.
That's a mouthful.
It is. A lot of P's.
Yeah, a lot of P's.
Lot of P's. A lot of interesting games this past weekend in the NFL. What was your biggest takeaway?
Miami. I mean, Tua was outstanding. I got to give it to him. I mean, he looked like Dan Fouts. I mean, he was that good.
Dan Fouts never threw for that many yards in a game.
No, but he did. As you looked up, you saw that he threw for about 430 in about 8 games.
Yeah, but never as many as Tua threw for last week. Let's check out the new rankings and where the Dolphins fall. They are in to the top 10, up 4 spots. The top 4 remain the same. Bills, Chiefs, Bucks, Eagles in that order. Packers jumping back into the top 5 after taking care of the Bears. Chargers only fall 1 spot, losing to the Chiefs in a pretty good game. Also the 49ers into the top 10. Ravens down a couple of spots. The biggest riser this week, the Arizona Cardinals, up 9 spots to number 12 after that comeback against the Raiders. The Broncos up 7, the Patriots up 8, and the Saints dropped 9 spots to number 15. Looking at the back third, the Bengals, Titans, and Colts taking big tumbles into the 20s. Commanders down 10 spots as well. Falcons, what's up, Pete? Still in last, and they almost beat the Saints. They almost beat the Rams. And they're better than last, right?
What do they say? Close is only good in slow dancing and grenades.
Also in wagering, because they covered the spreads in both those. All right, Bryant McFadden joins us as well as we go through Pete Prisco's power rankings. 1 through 4 stays the same, but all 4 of those teams made big statements this week.
Yeah, when you look at them, I took a lot of heat for putting the Eagles as high as I did early in the season, and I think they're playing it out. I mean, they look fantastic, and it was all about Jalen Hurts. If Jalen Hurts took the next step, they were going to be a good team, and he's taken the next step. I mean, they completely dominated the Minnesota Vikings. Of course, it was Monday night, and we know how Kirk Cousins plays on Monday night. He got the glazed look on his face, and off he went to the sideline, and they had no chance to win that game. But credit goes to Jalen Hurts. Again, when I was down there visiting with them before the season, guys told me that last year he'd come off the field and the coaches would say, oh my gosh, he hasn't gone through his progressions yet. And every day it was that way. And then this year, silence, because he learned how to go through his progressions. And that's growth for a quarterback. And he was outstanding on Monday night. And they've earned their right to be in that top 5.
B-Mac?
Yeah, I agree. I think right now when you look at all the teams in the NFC, I think the Eagles might be the best team after 2 weeks of play. Played against a pretty good Detroit Lions team. I think this is a much improved team from a year ago. We saw how they just bounced back and took care of their business against Washington. And what they did last night against the Vikings was they just dominated. One thing that I like, you talked about Jalen Hurts, but just the flow of the offense. They're so balanced. We know they can run the football. That was their calling card a year ago, but now the way he's throwing the football with confidence and with so much accuracy, and then defensively, with Darius Big Play Slay playing like he's playing in the 3rd level, we know what they can do at the front, especially with the defensive linemen they have. They might be the most complete team, Pete. After 2 weeks of play, granted, small sample size, but when you look at some of the other teams in the NFC, some teams that have been inconsistent in some areas, the Eagles might be the best team right now in the NFC.
Yeah, Pete, how close are they to overtaking the Bucks in your power rankings?
See, I put a little situation there for the Bucks, a little asterisk, because they haven't had guys on the offensive side of the ball, and that's held them back. They have 1 offensive touchdown, but the defense has been phenomenal. So you know the offense is going to get going for Tampa Bay. It better this week. They play Green Bay. But I think when you look at this is about Tom Brady getting guys around him. He'll be fine on offense.
That's where we're going next. The Bucks number 3 in your power rankings. The Packers are back into the top 5 after taking that dip in week 1, just like we saw last season. They bounced back. Did we learn much from them? It was the Bears, after all, a team they always dominate.
Yeah, but they look good on defense, and they had problems. I mean, the run defense wasn't great. I'm going to say that. They got to tighten that up a little bit, but this is going to be a good defensive team. And you could see with Lazard back, he started feeling a little bit more comfortable with his receivers, and I think those receivers are going to grow week in and week out. There's a bunch of young guys there. They're going to get better and better. So I'm not worried about Aaron Rodgers in the passing game. I think the defense is going to be outstanding, but they have to be better in the run game.
Yo, Pete, let's call a spade a spade. You're biased to the Green Bay Packers. They played against the Chicago Bears. We know Aaron Rodgers has owned the Bears throughout his entire career almost since being the starting quarterback in Green Bay. And they took care of the team they were supposed to take care of. That was a good get-right game, to say the least, having the Bears on their schedule week 2, especially at home. You just have a soft spot. I don't know if you like cheese. I don't know what it is, but you just have a soft spot for the Green Bay Packers because initially you had them to start the year off. I think that they were number 2 on your list in your power rankings in the top 5, if I'm not mistaken. Unexpected loss last week based on how bad they performed against the Vikings, and now all they did was beat the Chicago Bears. Oh, by the way, they were a double-digit point favorite, and now they instantly in your top 5. You just biased the Green Bay Packers.
You know what? There's nothing like BMAC talking about bias in the NFC North. Are you serious?
What are you trying to say?
Are you serious? You have a cousin that plays on a team in that you do a podcast with a guy from in that division from the NFC North, and you pick the Vikings to win that division. So you want to talk about bias?
I mean, I picked the Vikings because I like their personnel. I like what they have on both sides of the football.
You sticking to that? You sticking to that?
I am sticking to it. I am sticking to it. I think they will win the division. We will talk about this throughout the entire year, so we can always go back and forth. But when it's all said and done, I think the Minnesota Vikings will win the NFC North. I do.
Well, at least they have a cornerback who can block field goals. They have that going for them.
That special teams are very, very important, Pete. You know that. Very important.
Punt the ball out of bounds.
Well, last week we had that argument whether the Eagles should be number 4 or the Vikings should be number 4. I think we found out right now that the Eagles are a better team right now than the Minnesota Vikings.
So basically you're saying I won the argument.
For now, yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. As long as Kirk Cousins is playing in prime time. Let's go to the Tua Tagovailoa-led Miami Dolphins, and what a performance that was. How about that? The week that Brady Quinn compares Tua to Dan Fouts, he goes out and throws for more yards than Fouts ever did.
Okay. I got to give him his credit. He was fantastic. But have you ever seen receivers that wide open? I mean, the Baltimore Ravens, and they had a bunch of injuries in the back end and rookies playing back there, and Kyle Hamilton looked like he was stuck in cement, but they were wide open. But give Tua credit. He rallied his team back. You can't take that away from him. And like I wrote in lead into the power rankings, show me again. Show me this week against Buffalo. If you do it this week in Buffalo, then it's a pattern. Not 460 yards, because you're not going to get that every week, or 6 touchdowns. But give me 330 and 3, and I'm going to sit here next week and say, you know what, Tua? I was wrong about you. Because unlike the big guy that sits here when we make the picks, I can say I was wrong.
Talking about Brady.
So, Pete, question for you. Last week, the Baltimore Ravens, after their Week 1 victory against the Jets, where were they on your power rankings last week?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I think they were on the outside of the top 5, if I'm not mistaken.
Probably 7 or 8, yeah.
Yeah, probably 6, 7, or 8, anywhere close to that. I think having Miami at number 8, I think they should be lower, Pete. I really do think they should be lower. Number 1, they're undefeated. They're 2-0. Beat a team they've been able to beat at home in the Patriots Week 1. And seeing what they did last week, just solely in the fourth quarter alone, was unbelievable. And I understand you still have concerns with Tua Tagovailoa, and I don't expect to see him throw for 400-plus yards every ball game. But at any given time when he is in the lineup, they can take a small play and turn it into a big play because of the guys he has surrounding him. And this is a big-time measuring stick this Sunday when they host the Buffalo Bills. But I think they should be lower. I really do. I think the Miami Dolphins should be lower. Having them at number 8, I don't think it's deserving.
Who should be ahead of them?
Who should be ahead of
I mean, if you're going to say
Miami?
they should be lower, who should be ahead of them?
He's saying they should be lower as in like a lower number, like 7 or 6
a lower
or
number.
5.
So
higher
I
in
think
the
they should be
rankings.
lower. They should be.
Higher in the rankings. You confused me like you did last week when you gave surf and turf pick and you only picked one side, BMAC.
I don't want surf and turf ever again. I told you I want brick chicken. All right, that's it. That's my thing. Brick chicken. Not doing surf. That's your thing. You can have it.
BMAC once ordered Cornish game hen at a Marriott.
I was on a diet.
Well, we do picks, and my thing is I do surf and turf. I pick over, under, and a side. And he went last week, and he said, "All right, I'm going to go with Pete's surf and turf," and he only gave out one pick. And I'm like, "That's not surf and turf."
All right, so BMAC thinks the Dolphins should be higher in your rankings.
Above who?
Yes.
Above who?
Yeah, who should they be?
I think they should be above the Green Bay Packers. I think they should be above the Green Bay Packers.
That's laughable. That's laughable.
Yeah, because you're
That's
biased
laughable.
to Green Bay. They're undefeated. They're undefeated.
BMAC, if the Packers played the Dolphins on a neutral field and you had to pick one side, and if you didn't pick it right, you were going to the prison for 10 years, who are you picking?
I'm taking the Dolphins.
Well, get used to being behind bars.
No Cornish game hen in prison there, BMAC.
You're going to be eating some bologna sandwiches.
I'm taking the Dolphins.
BMAC.
I'm taking the Dolphins. I trust the Dolphins offense with Tyreek Hill, Waddle, everything they have going on in that offense. I trust them more than the unknown pass catchers the Green Bay Packers have. Listen, it wasn't like Aaron Rodgers had a heck of a day. They just ran the football. Chicago had no answer running the football. We still haven't seen that prolific Aaron Rodgers in throwing the football that we've seen year after year after year after year. We've yet to see that. We have yet to see that.
It's going to take a little time. But we also have yet to see a Miami defense that was outstanding last year. They were terrible last week, weren't they?
They were terrible. Yeah, they were terrible. It happens. But the thing about that situation, their offense was able to bail them out. We know Miami's defense is not the defense that we saw against the Baltimore Ravens. They had a bad ball game. But get this, their offense had their back. And they played against Lamar Jackson. You know what type of superstar Lamar Jackson is. Lamar Jackson can make a lot of defenses look bad.
Miami ahead of Green Bay is laughable.
Well, we'll see. After this week, we'll know a lot more as the Dolphins take on the Bills. Let's go to another team along with the Dolphins who jumped into the top 10. That would be the San Francisco 49ers, up 4 spots to number 9. Pete, are they better off this season with Jimmy Garoppolo as the starting quarterback?
Yes, they are. They're better in terms of trying to win games this year. They're not better for where they want to be as a franchise. And the reason I say that, you went out and you traded up to go get Trey Lance. So you clearly liked him. You wanted him to be the starter. So he needed to play. He needs the reps. This guy hasn't played a lot of football. Didn't play a lot of football in college. And so he needs to be on the field. So from that standpoint, it's a big hit for them. But from this year, I think it's better for him. I really believe it's better for George Kittle. It's going to be better for some of those receivers. I think it's going to be better for Deebo Samuel. They're going to start using him like a wide receiver again. Jimmy Garoppolo was bringing him back was one of the greatest hedges of all time. I think, and everybody will say, oh, well, he restructured. They couldn't get anything for him. They realized that Trey Lance wasn't quite where he needed to be. You can say no all you want. They realized that Trey Lance wasn't what they thought he was going to be, and so they hedged. Yes, they hedged, and it worked out for them.
What do you think,
not about hedging. They got lucky. They tried to trade Jimmy Garoppolo. It wasn't about they realized Trey Lance might not be the guy who they thought he potentially can be. They tried to trade him, and just because of the shoulder surgery he had in the offseason, they had no suitors. They were trying to trade Jimmy Garoppolo.
No, I get it. They were trying to trade him, but then they went to camp and they had the workouts in Minnesota and they had the training camp and the preseason, and they realized that maybe he wasn't quite where they thought he was. So why ruin a good season if he can't be that guy?
One thing you know about the National Football League, as long as you've covered the league, if you don't trade a big name player with a nice price tag before training camp, the likelihood of him getting traded in training camp, especially come off an injury, is not likely.
They could have dumped him.
That was the case.
They could have dumped him.
They could have what? No, you're not just going to you're not. You're going to try to get something in return. You're not going to just dump him.
So,
no, that doesn't
but
make any sense.
If they couldn't get anything in return, could they not have just let him go?
Yes, they could have just let him go.
Okay, but why didn't they then? Why didn't they?
Because they want to at least try to get something. Hold on to him.
Why didn't they? Because they weren't convinced of the other guy.
It makes more sense to hold on to him than letting him go, just in case there might be a quarterback-needy team with the injuries that they might need to make a move for.
Yeah, they're the quarterback-needy team with the injury. But here's the thing. Is it worth it to keep him around if Trey Lance was going to be a quarterback and have a potential split in the locker room of guys who want Jimmy Garoppolo to play? Was it worth that? Because you saw the way did you see the way that team reacted after the game with him?
My personal answer is yes, it was worth it because I was never fully in on Trey Lance being the starting quarterback this year.
Neither were they.
He hasn't proved anything.
Neither were they.
He, like you said, a small sample size in college. Then he gets drafted as high as he did, and then instantly you're just giving him the keys. He didn't earn it. It wasn't like he just outperformed Jimmy G in a quarterback competition. So I, for one, never thought he was the right guy. But I do agree with you, though, Pete. For this year, if you want to win ball games and be relevant and try to get into the playoffs, Jimmy Garoppolo gives them the best chance. Now, whatever happens when they get into the playoffs, that's out of my control. But as far as getting to the postseason, they have a better chance getting there with Jimmy Garoppolo than Trey Lance. I agree with you.
They have the second best chance to win the NFC behind the Buccaneers, according to Sportsline. All right, now to BMAC's Vikings, who fall out of the top 10 after the loss to the Eagles. Pete, give us that glazed look that we saw from BMAC. What do you have to say for yourself?
Bad performance. Just me personally, guys, Pete, and I'd love to get your thoughts about this as well. I just didn't like the game plan on both sides of the football for Minnesota. When you saw Philly, the first offensive possession, they set the tone. We're going to put the ball game in our quarterback hands, and we're going to let him do what he's been called to do. Empty set, no one in the backfield. They were aggressive. Defensively for the Vikings, they just played a soft, generic coverage basically the entire time. I didn't see one blitz. I might be off a player or two, but I didn't see one blitz. Remember what they did last week against the Green Bay Packers? Pressure, pressure, pressure. Either they did it the normal way with 4 guys rushing, or they added an extra hat in the blitz concept. We didn't see none of that at all. And then offensively for the Vikings, I mean, come on. Pete, offensively, this looked like this was Coach Zimmer coaching the team. Against the Eagles, it looked like a Coach Zimmer-led offense than from what we thought we would see based on Kevin O'Connell being the play caller.
Yeah, it was not a good look for the Vikings. I thought they had a bad plan on defense. And one thing, everybody thinks, okay, we have a running quarterback, Jalen Hurts. You don't want to turn your back to him and play a lot of man coverage. But if you go back and look at his numbers, when teams play off like they did last night, he kills them. So that was a bad plan on the defensive side of the ball. But that's who Ed Donatel is. That's who he is. He plays off coverage. That's what they want to do. And on the other side of the ball, I don't know why they were not as aggressive early in the game. It made no sense to me, but maybe they knew it was Monday night and Mr. Monday Night would show up, as he ultimately did. Because if Irv Smith catches the ball down the sidelines, that's a touchdown. They might be back in the game. They had a couple opportunities in the red zone. He threw bad interceptions. I mean, there were opportunities there, as bad as they played, but it was a bad plan all the way around.
Worst record in Monday Night Football history, 2-10. But luckily for the Vikings, if they get into the playoffs, you don't play playoff games on Monday. All right, Pete Prisco's Power Rankings rolling on here. We are through the top 10. Up next, into the teens, and that's where we find the biggest risers and the biggest fallers this week. And I don't even know if the Colts made the teens. They might be in the 20s the way they're playing. Chris Hassel, Pete Prisco, and Bryant McFadden. We're discussing Pete Prisco's Power Rankings. What is it?
BMAC. He wasn't paying attention. I had to get him.
Over here,
BMAC. Over here, BMAC.
Yeah,
I heard something behind me. I had to make sure nothing fell.
Yeah, you all right? Okay, you're okay. Well, we'll watch out behind you. We can see behind you.
I know you guys are concerned.
We'll look out for you.
You don't want one of those jerseys to fall off the hanger over there.
That high school jersey
definitely not the Mustang one.
That thing might fall apart. It's so old.
They retired his jersey.
That's great. So let's move on to the teams that rose and the teams that fell. And the Cardinals are your biggest riser, up 9 spots to number 12. The question is, everything we saw there, and Greg Gumbel said it seems like the best play for the Cardinals is just street ball. Let Kyler Murray run around. Is that sustainable?
No, it's not sustainable, but they've also had a ton of injuries so far early in the season. I think as they get guys back, they're going to get better.
They don't have Hopkins yet.
Yeah, and defensively, the secondary's been banged up as well. I think as they get guys better, they're going to be a better team. This was partly a byproduct of teams that lost in front of them and fell down the rankings a little bit. But I got to give them credit. They were dead. They were done. And all of a sudden, you look, and they're right back in the game, and you could just feel it coming. And Kyler Murray made the plays. I mean, that 2-point conversion was incredible. I mean, he made the plays when he had to make them. So I give him a lot of credit. I give the Cardinals a lot of credit. Picking up a fumble late to go win it, that doesn't happen really rarely in overtime. But the fact that they did it and they ran off the field, that might be the moment that turns this season around, because they were lifeless in week 1. They were lifeless for most of this game. But at the end of it, they really brought it and showed a lot of energy, which is a good sign.
Yeah, and I think Kyler Murray is at his best when he can just improvise. He's very, very, handsy in being able to show what type of player he is under uncomfortable situations, but I think he is at his best. And they needed to win this ball game, because if you look at within their division alone, they all have the same record right now. You know, all the teams in their division have the same record, so getting back in the right track week 2 was huge for the Arizona Cardinals. But I still have some concerns. I think the win for Arizona was more about the letdown from the Raiders than anything, but you got to take a W however you can get it. And they won the ball game, but they got to find a way to run the football better. Number one, the running game has been missing. But this was all about Kyler Murray. Say whatever you want to say about him. In these moments when he has to play fast, when they have to fight from behind, that's the quarterback you don't want to play, especially when it gets close to the red zone when he can buy time like he's been able to buy.
I don't think he sees very well over the line of scrimmage. So when they play fast and loose and kind of like street ball, he gets outside and creates and he uses his legs and everything where it's not as conventional. If you've noticed, his drops are like 20 yards half the time because I don't think he sees over the line of scrimmage. So why not cater to the way he plays? I think that's the way they should play.
And that kind of goes with what he was saying, that he doesn't need to study that much because he's at his best when things totally break down and he
you still need to study.
Improvises.
You still need to study.
35% chance to make the postseason, according to Sportsline, for the Cardinals. A couple of teams that also made big jumps this week, the Broncos and the Patriots. But did either team look good to you?
No, but again, this is kind of a byproduct of teams going the other direction. The Patriots actually looked decent. And the reason I say that is they didn't have any sacks. They didn't allow any sacks, which that's a good sign. I mean, when you're off, and I've said that all along, I thought their offensive line was pretty good. Mac Jones was a little bit better. They ran the ball better. And defensively, they limited Pittsburgh. I mean, they played pretty good football.
A lot of teams are going to limit Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and they might have a quarterback change coming in Pittsburgh soon. But still, you got to give them credit. It's back-to-back road games for New England against a team playing its home opener, and you go in there and win the game. You got to give them credit for that. The Broncos were sloppy again. Russell Wilson's not playing like Russell Wilson. They got to speed the clock up a little bit, let him play like Russell Wilson, and I think they can get that thing going. They're not a great team right now, and nor did I think they would be a playoff team this year, but they need to pick it up offensively.
Yeah, I agree with you in regards to the Patriots, and I would like to devote more of my attention to the Broncos because I felt like the Broncos, when they brought in Russell Wilson, the expectations became extremely high with what they believe they can do. In 2 weeks of play, the offense has been miserable. They've been undisciplined. And it seems like, Pete, Nathaniel Hackett, maybe the moment is too big for him. I mean, I've never seen an NFL game where the stadium, the home stadium, is counting down the shot clock to the play clock to help remind you so you don't get a delay of game penalty. That's unheard of. The trust in regards to their clock time management offensively is no longer there with them. And the only reason they won this ball game last Sunday is because they played against the Houston Texans and Davis Mills. If they played against any other team, any other quarterback, especially a quarterback with experience, they would be 0-2 right now.
Yeah, that's a shot at your boy Davis Mills.
Yeah,
that's
Davis Mills, he didn't play well last week, but he had some drops too if you watch the tape. Look, the problem with the clock management, Nate Hackett's just learning. That's the thing when you get new coaches. He will get better at it. He's a smart guy. But you're right. So far, BMAC, it's been a major problem.
Broncos host the 49ers Sunday Night Football. Patriots host the Ravens. Let's move on to the Colts. Biggest faller of the week, and rightfully so, after that disaster in Jacksonville, which you called, by the way, because every time they go to Jacksonville, something like this happens. They just look, Jacksonville's their kryptonite, but they look bad week 1, too. How did we get the Colts so wrong going into this season?
I mean, they should be 0-2. I mean, the Texans they blew a 17-point lead in that game. Here's the problem with the Indianapolis Colts. Their calling card over the course of the last 4 or 5 years has been the power of their offensive line, how great the offensive line is. Quentin Nelson's great. Ryan Kelly's a Pro Bowl center. The right tackle, Braden Smith's a good player. None of them were good on Sunday. None of them. And that includes Quentin Nelson. Roy Robertson Harris put Quentin Nelson in the backfield on his back on one play.
Is he a spinning top?
They're all, there's a little hint for you. But it was terrible. And if they can't block, they're not going to run the ball. And when they can't run the ball, they don't have anybody outside that scares you. It's a big problem. But let's flip it over to the other side of the ball. Leonard's not on the field, so where are their playmakers? Kwity Paye was a no-show. He's supposed to be a 12, 13-sack guy. Yannick Ngakoue, a couple plays, but not much. DeForest Buckner, he's playing too high. The last couple years have been way too high. I think they have major problems across the board. I don't think this team right now is a good football team.
No, they're not. They're not. They have no identity on either side of the football. And Matt Ryan looked old against Jacksonville.
He was on his back.
I was right there. Say it again.
He was on his back all day.
Yeah, but even when he wasn't, he looked kind of old last week against the Texans as well. I thought I would see a different Matt Ryan than what I'm seeing currently for the Indianapolis Colts. But you talked about the calling card. Yes, offensive line has been disappointing, and because of that, we're not seeing Jonathan Taylor, the Taylor that we thought we would see. And defensively, they just don't seem like they have playmakers. We know who they have, and we've seen those guys make plays. But so far this season, they haven't made any plays, any significant plays. And the thing about this particular division, the AFC South, it's there for whoever wants it. And in 2 weeks of play, it's hard to say who the best team is in the AFC South right now.
Colts are still the favorites.
You can make an argument. Say it again.
Colts are still the favorites in Vegas.
Betting-wise, they are, but
the best team right now is Jacksonville.
Case for Jacksonville.
Mm-hmm. Jacksonville's the best team right now.
I think you're right. I was going to say the same thing, Pete. I can make a strong, legit case for Jacksonville being the best team in the AFC South right now.
After what we saw this week,
they're
the
physical.
Favorite. Why
they're
not?
Physical on defense. They have young players who run to the football at linebacker. The secondary is much improved. Offensive line played great last week, and Trevor Lawrence can whip the ball around.
Yeah.
The one problem they didn't run.
They
didn't run the ball very well last week. They need to pick that up a little bit. But we'll know more about Jacksonville this week.
Sure.
They go to the Chargers.
3 of last year's playoff teams in the AFC are 0-2, including the AFC champion Cincinnati Bengals. BMAC, which team, in your opinion, has the best chance to right the ship? Is it the Bengals, the Raiders, or the Titans?
Wow, great question, Chris. I'll say the Raiders. I think the Raiders. I think eventually they will establish their identity. The personnel is there, right? They have the personnel. They just got to find a way to close ball games. And that's something that we really haven't seen so far, especially last week against the Cardinals. In regards to the Cincinnati Bengals, they tried to improve the offensive line, but they're getting the same outcome, the same results. So I don't know how you can make any improvements based on the guys you have, and you can't just bring in a whole new 5. So they just got to ride it out. Maybe it's a coaching thing in Cincinnati in regards to the offensive line play. And with Tennessee, they just don't have talent. That's it. They just don't have talent. Trading away A.J. Brown was the one thing they could not afford to do, because we've started to see how that has benefited the Eagles' offense and Jalen Hurts, and we see how it's hurt Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry. So me personally, I think they're just a bad team. It's going to be a long season for Tennessee.
I think the Bengals are the one team that can turn it around. If you look at their 2 games, slow starts have killed them. They got back in both games. They just started slowly. I think that's something they got to work on. Once they get that figured out, they'll be fine. They can score points. They're still pretty good on defense. I think the Bengals are the one team of those 3 teams. They can figure it out going forward, because I think they do have the talent.
Falcons don't even have a number on playoff odds. Bengals with the shortest odds to make the playoffs among those 0-2 teams in the AFC to make the playoffs. But the Titans are actually. And by the way, Sportsline says it's the Titans as well. Sportsline likes the Titans 29%. Those are better numbers than those other 2 teams. And that probably a lot of that has to do with the easy division that they're in. Quite frankly, the schedule moving forward. But they look like the worst of those 3 teams right now. All right, how about the team with the most to gain going into next week, Pete?
It's the Miami Dolphins. You beat the Buffalo Bills. You're making a case maybe you're the best team in the league. And, this is it. This is it for Tua. Put 2 games like that together. Not 600 yards, but give me 303. Defense bounce back, play well, slow down Josh Allen. Nobody slowed him down yet. If you do all that and you win that game, Miami Dolphins might be the best team in the league right now.
Wow. I agree with you. I don't know if beating Buffalo would instantly warrant them being the best team, but clearly they will open a lot of eyes. And I'm right there with you. They have the most to gain. This is the ultimate measuring stick for the Miami Dolphins, not just in the entire NFL, but within their division alone. If they have any aspirations in winning the AFC East, it starts versus the Buffalo Bills. They have been the cream of the crop in that division of the last few seasons. They've been almost everybody's pick to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl this year. So this is a big-time statement game for the Miami Dolphins, and most importantly for your guy, Tua Tagovailoa, being able to showcase that he can go toe-to-toe with some of the best quarterbacks in the National Football League. He just went toe-to-toe with Lamar Jackson, came out on top. Now another big-time test for Tua and trying to go toe-to-toe against Josh Allen.
That one's on CBS Sunday, 1 o'clock Eastern time, a couple of 1-0 teams. B-Mac, what's coming up on the latest All Things Covered podcast? You know yet?
Well, unfortunately, we got to recap the ugly loss.
Oh, you're going to say, unfortunately, we've canceled this week's show.
No, we can't cancel. We still got to provide a product. But we got to recap the ugly showing against the Philadelphia Eagles. We got to give people a reason to feel this team can bounce back this upcoming week against the Detroit Lions. So that's the gift and the curse. You know, it's great shows when you have wins to talk about. It's not so great when you have losses to talk about, but we still got to provide a product.
B-Mac and his cousin, Patrick Peterson, latest All Things Covered podcast.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.